Don't you dare pretend you didn't know exactly what you were doing. My mother's voice shrieked through the phone, so loud I had to pull it away from my ear. We're family. You can't just abandon us because your feelings got hurt. I sat in my home office gripping my phone, my knuckles white. Outside, the April rain lashed against the windows of my Burlington townhouse. A steady, relentless downpour. Numbness. Rage. A tangled, suffocating mix of both. Everything I had believed about my family had shattered in an instant. All because of one text message. A single slip-up from my brother Brandon. He hadn't meant to send it to the family group chat. He'd meant to send it to the secret one, the one he shared with our parents. My name is Brooke Harper. I'm 35 years old. And until yesterday, I thought I was just being a good daughter by helping my parents with their retirement. I had built my own marketing consulting firm from scratch. When the business took off 5 years ago, I started sending my parents money, extra every month, just to make sure they could enjoy their retirement without struggling. What I didn't know was how they really saw me. The family ATM just sent another $3,000. Brandon's text, followed by my dad's reply. LMAO, keep that gravy train running. She's too stupid to realize we're using her. Then my mother. Just bought those golf clubs your father wanted. Jordan would flip if she knew her money was going to those instead of medication. And the screenshots kept coming. Years of conversations, strategies on how to manipulate me, plans to extract more money, jokes about my gullibility. I scrolled, my breath catching in my throat. They had lied about overdue medical bills. Lied about struggling to afford their heating costs. Lied about needing help just to make ends meet. While I was sacrificing for them, they were taking vacations, upgrading their cars, and laughing behind my back. Brandon must have realized his mistake because the messages vanished seconds later. But it was too late. I had seen everything. For the past 24 hours, my phone had been blowing up. Dad. Come on, you know we were just joking around. Mom. You're taking this out of context, sweetie. Don't be so dramatic. Brandon. I was just going along with it to stay on their good side. You know how they are. But I didn't know how they were. Not really. Not until now. Outside, the storm grew wilder, the wind rattling the glass as if it were echoing the chaos inside me. For years, I had been financing their lifestyle, believing I was helping them survive. Instead, I had been funding their luxury, and they had been laughing at me the entire time. A sharp knock broke through my spiraling thoughts. I crossed the room, phone still clenched in my hand, and looked through the peephole. Brandon. Soaking wet. Face pale. Expression pleading. My jaw tightened. I wasn't ready for this conversation, but maybe it was time to have it anyway. I opened the door just enough to meet his eyes, but didn't step aside. What do you want? Brandon swallowed hard, rain dripping from his hair. Jordan, please. Can I come in? I can explain everything. I lifted my phone, the screen still glowing with his words. Explain what? My voice was cold. How you've all been laughing at me for years. Just told Jordan Dad needs dental surgery. Guts hing. Brandon stood there, soaking wet, his face pale as he tried to find the right words. It's not what it looks like, he stammered, his voice cracking. Mom and Dad, they started it. I just went along with it. I let out a sharp breath, a bitter laugh escaping before I could stop it. So you were just following orders? Like some kind of financial Nazi? The words came out harsher than I intended, but I didn't take them back. Because I meant them. $3,000 every month, Brandon. $36,000 a year. For 5 years. Do you know what that adds up to? Brandon looked down, guilt twisting his features. I know it's a lot. $180,000, I said, my voice shaking. And that's not including all the extras. Dad's supposed medical expenses. Mom's broken furnace last winter. I felt physically sick. I had skipped a vacation to send them an extra $5,000 for that furnace. A furnace that never even needed replacing. Brandon shifted uneasily. Look, they took it too far, I know. But they're getting older and they're 65, not 95. My voice rose, the anger breaking free. Dad is still golfing every weekend with those fancy new clubs. Clubs I paid for. While I thought he needed life-saving medication. Brandon flinched. Please, Jordan. They're freaking out. Dad's worried about his heart meds. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. The medication that doesn't exist? I shot back. Or the real ones I actually paid for while you all blew my money on vacations and luxury items? Brandon's face crumbled. I messed up, I know that. But they really do need your help now. My stomach turned. Why? I asked, my voice quieter now. Because they got used to a lifestyle they couldn't afford? Because they counted on my money to keep up the illusion. He hesitated. That was exactly why. I shook my head. Their mortgage on the lakeside condo they bought last year while telling me they were struggling to pay rent on their modest apartment? A strange calm finality settled over me. I think you should leave. Jordan, please. I held up a hand. No. I met his gaze, my voice steady. I've been Jordan, please, for too long. Now, I'm just Jordan. And Jordan is done. After Brandon left, I sank onto my couch, my whole body trembling. My phone sat on the coffee table, screen still glowing with their words. Just told Jordan the roof is leaking. Let's see how much we can squeeze out of her this time. She's such a sucker for helping family. I almost feel bad. Almost. And then Brandon. Maybe we should start a betting pool on how quickly she sends the money. A joke. That's all I had ever been to them. An ATM. A walking, breathing paycheck. A resource to be drained. I grabbed my laptop and logged into my bank account. Every month for 5 years there it was. $3,000. Transferred like clockwork to my parents' joint account. And then all the emergencies. Another $40,000 over the years. Dental work that never happened. Car repairs for problems that didn't exist. Medical bills for treatments they never received. I had delayed buying my own home to help them with their supposed mortgage troubles. I had worked 60-hour weeks to support both my life and theirs. I had skipped vacations, bought secondhand furniture, and cut corners on my own expenses to make sure they were comfortable. For what? So they could laugh at me. So they could buy golf clubs and take cruises while I stayed up at night wondering if they were eating properly. My chest felt tight, my breath shallow, but my hands remained steady as I opened another tab. The investment account. 3 years ago, I had secretly started a retirement fund for them. A surprise I had planned to give them when they turned 70. I had been contributing $1,000 a month. The balance? $42,000. I stared at the close account button. My finger hovered over it. Not yet. Not in anger. Not in hurt. I needed a clear head for this. I grabbed my phone and dialed. Rachel, my best friend and my attorney. They did what? She practically screamed when I explained everything. I let out a hollow laugh. I know. I've been an idiot. No, Jordan, she said, voice sharp. You've been a good daughter. They've been monsters. Now let's fix this. And for the first time in 5 years, I finally felt like I had the power. You've been kind. They're the ones who should be ashamed. Rachel's voice softened. What do you want to do? I exhaled slowly. I don't know. Part of me wanted to cut them off completely, disappear from their lives like they never existed. Another part wanted to confront them and watch them squirm as they tried to explain themselves. Rachel, ever the voice of reason, didn't let me spiral. Before you do anything, we need to review what you've set up for them legally. Are they on any of your accounts? Insurance policies? That retirement supplement you mentioned? A chill ran down my spine. I hadn't even considered just how entangled we still were. Beyond the monthly transfers and the investment account, I had added them as dependents on my premium health insurance 2 years ago. My father's heart medication, which I now seriously questioned the existence of, was being covered under my plan. And worse? They were still listed as beneficiaries on my life insurance policy. I clenched my jaw. I need to untangle all of this. Rachel's tone was steady. One step at a time. First, gather all documentation, bank statements, texts asking for money, everything. Second, make a list of all financial connections you need to sever. Third, decide if you want to tell them why you're doing this. I nodded, more to myself than to her. Got it. The moment I hung up, my phone buzzed with a text. Mom, your father is very upset. His blood pressure is through the roof because of your behavior. We need to talk now. I stared at the screen. Even now, they were still trying to manipulate me. They still thought I would fold at the first mention of a health scare. That I'd come running just like always. Not this time. I opened my laptop and began taking screenshots of every monthly transfer. Then I started a document. Family financial support. 5 years. Line by line I listed every dollar cent. Every emergency they had fabricated. Every sacrifice I had made. By the time I finished, the document was 12 pages long. I wasn't just hurt. I was done. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. No second guessing. No guilt. Just a plan. Before doubt could creep in, I called my assistant. I'm taking a personal day. No calls, no emails. This needed my full attention. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Brooke Harper speaking. Professional voice came through. Ms. Harper, this is Ethan from Vermont Community Bank. I'm returning your call about closing an investment account. I took a steady breath. Yes. I need to close the supplemental retirement account I set up for Thomas and Brenda Harper. A brief silence. May I ask if there's a problem with the account? I didn't hesitate. No problem with the account. Just a problem with the intended recipients. Ethan cleared his throat. Understood. Since you're the sole controller of the account, it was classified as a gift. You can close it without their knowledge or consent. I nodded to myself. Good. Let's do that. $42,680 will be transferred to your primary account within 3 business days. I exhaled. Step 1 complete. Next, I called my health insurance provider. This one was trickier. Mid-year changes to dependents required a qualifying life event. Unfortunately, discovering your parents were scamming you wasn't on their list. But after explaining my situation to a sympathetic representative named Carlos, he found a loophole. Since they have their own residence and you no longer provide more than 50% of their financial support, we can process this as a change in dependent status. What does that mean? I asked. It means they'll be removed from your policy at the end of the month. They'll receive notification, which gives them 30 days to find alternative coverage. I closed my eyes for a second, relief flooding through me. That's perfect. Thank you for understanding. Carlos sighed. Family situations can be complicated. Been there myself. Step 2 complete. The life insurance policy? That was the easiest. A simple online form removed them as beneficiaries and replaced them with a local children's charity. By noon, I had systematically dismantled every financial tie to my family, except for one. Brandon's student loan. For the past 3 years I had been covering his payments, $580 a month, with 2 years still remaining. That one made me pause. Brandon had been part of the deception, but had he been pressured? Or was he just sorry he got caught? The answer came almost instantly. My phone pinged with a text from Brandon. Mom and Dad are freaking out. Dad says his prescription refill was denied at the pharmacy. What did you do? Not a word of apology. No acknowledgement of what they had done, just immediate pressure to restore their cash flow. I exhaled slowly and typed back. Their consequences are not my problem anymore. My phone rang almost immediately. Brandon. I let it go to voicemail. Instead, I turned to my laptop and composed an email. I kept it cold, direct, unmistakable. Subject: Financial support provided, 2018 to 2023, Thomas and Brenda. Attached is a comprehensive accounting of the financial support I have provided over the past 5 years, totaling $221,865. This includes monthly transfers, emergency funds, medical expenses, the supplemental retirement account I established for you as of today. All recurring transfers have been stopped. You have been removed as dependents from my health insurance, effective May 31st. The retirement account has been closed. Your duplicity has been documented, including screenshots of your own messages revealing how you manipulated and deceived me while mocking my generosity. Do not contact me again unless it is to repay what you have taken under false pretenses. Jordan. I read it twice. Attach the 12-page document. Hit send. Step 3 complete. Then I blocked their numbers, removed them from my social media, and sat back in my chair, exhausted but relieved. For the first time in years, my money was truly my own. 3 days of blessed silence. Then they found a way around my blocks. The doorbell rang at 8:30 p.m. As I sat reviewing client proposals, I knew before I even checked. Through the peephole I saw them. My parents. Brandon. Their faces a mixture of anger and panic. I did not open the door. Instead, I picked up my phone and dialed. Rachel, I whispered, as if they might hear me through the walls. They're at my house. Her response was immediate. Do not let them in. If they don't leave, call the police for trespassing. I hesitated. That feels extreme. Trust me, Jordan. Once they're inside, it'll be much harder to get them out, physically and emotionally. The doorbell rang again, then pounding. Jordan. My father's voice boomed. We know you're in there. You can't just cut us off without talking to us. I stayed silent, my pulse hammering. Instead, I sent Brandon a text. I have nothing to say. Please leave or I'll call the police. Through the peephole, I watched him check his phone, show it to my parents, and then have what looked like a heated discussion. My mother was crying. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. For a moment, I almost felt something, guilt? Pity? Then I remembered the messages. She's such a sucker for helping family. I almost feel bad. Almost. And just like that, the feeling disappeared. Eventually, they left. But not before my father shouted over his shoulder. You're going to regret this, Jordan. We're family. You can't just abandon us. I let out a slow breath. The irony of him using the word abandon wasn't lost on me. They'd abandoned me years ago. The next morning, the emails started. My mother's was long. A winding guilt trip about my father's health and how his medication was now unaffordable. My father's was short and blunt. Stop this childish behavior immediately. Brandon's was pleading. They can't afford their mortgage without your help. I forwarded all of them to Rachel. Didn't respond. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived. Inside, a handwritten note from my mother. Jordan, we don't understand why you're punishing us like this. Yes, we made some jokes in poor taste, but that's what families do. Your father's heart medication is $450 a month without insurance. Our mortgage is due next week, and we can't cover it without your help. I stared at the words. Not 1 ounce of real accountability. Not even a hint of genuine remorse. Just more excuses. More manipulation. More demands. I folded the letter carefully and tossed it into the shredder. We might lose our condo. Is that what you want? For your elderly parents to be homeless? Please stop this cruelty and talk to us. I almost laughed. Elderly? They were 65 and in good health. My father's golf game had never been better. According to the country club photos Brandon had accidentally included in one of those fateful screenshots. Still, a small part of me wondered, had I really left them in a desperate situation? I needed facts, not feelings. So, I called the pharmacy where my father filled his prescriptions, pretending to be my mother. I'm calling about my husband Thomas Wright's heart medication. What's the cost without insurance? Let me check, the pharmacist said. A pause. It's $42 for a 30-day supply, Mrs. Wright. Not $450. Another lie. The last flicker of guilt died on the spot. That evening, as I was leaving my office, Brandon appeared. He looked like hell, dark circles under his eyes, his clothes rumpled like he hadn't slept in days. Jordan, please. He stepped in front of me, blocking my way. They're falling apart. Dad's talking about bankruptcy. I exhaled, shifting my bag on my shoulder. That's not my problem. I moved to step around him. How can you be so cold? His voice cracked. They're our parents. I stopped, met his eyes. Are they? I asked, my tone sharp. Because real parents don't exploit their children. Real parents don't laugh about how stupid and gullible their daughter is while draining her bank account. They made mistakes, but... No. I cut him off, my voice like steel. A mistake is forgetting a birthday. What they did was calculated. And cruel. For years, Brandon. His jaw clenched. The condo is going into foreclosure. They can't make the payments without you. For a split second, a pang of guilt stabbed at me. Then I remembered the screenshot. Just convinced Jordan we're struggling with rent. Meanwhile, we're closing on the lake condo next week. Cheers. I inhaled sharply. Exhaled slowly. They shouldn't have bought a place they couldn't afford, I said flatly. Brandon tried again. What about Dad's medication? I raised an eyebrow. You mean the prescription that costs $42, not $450? His eyes widened. How did you? I tilted my head. I did my research. No more lies, Brandon. I stepped past him toward my car. Tell them to look into government assistance programs. That's what they're there for. Jordan, he called after me, a last-ditch effort. They're talking about moving in with me. I can't handle that. I turned back, tilting my head slightly. That sounds like a you problem, Brandon. I gave him a small, tight smile. Welcome to consequences. 2 weeks later, I was finally sitting in a therapy session I had put off for far too long. Dear Carter, mid-50s, kind eyes, no-nonsense demeanor, listened as I recounted the entire messy, painful story. I exhaled. Every day, I swing between feeling strong and feeling horrible. Yesterday, I found out through a mutual friend that my parents had to cancel their country club membership. I actually felt guilty about it. For hours. Dear Carter nodded. That's normal, Jordan. You're grieving the family you thought you had. And that includes grieving the role you played as their provider. Her words settled in my chest, heavy and uncomfortably true. But they didn't deserve my support, I murmured. They were using me. She nodded. Both things can be true at once. They didn't deserve your support. And you can still feel loss about no longer providing it. I swallowed. I hadn't thought about it that way before. For 5 years, my self-worth had been tied to being the successful daughter who made sure her parents never struggled. Who was I now? Dear Carter leaned forward. Slightly. The role of family provider became part of your identity. Now you're redefining who you are without it. I sat with that thought for a long time. And for the first time since cutting them off, I realized I wasn't just getting my money back. I was getting myself back. As I left the session, my phone buzzed with an unexpected call. Uncle Greg, my father's brother, lived across the country in Oregon. We weren't close, but curiosity made me answer. Jordan? It's Uncle Greg. His voice was measured, careful. I just got a strange call from your father. He asked if he and your mother could come live with us for a while. Said you cut them off financially and they're about to lose their home. Is that true? I let out a slow breath. It's complicated, Uncle Greg. A pause. Then a dry chuckle. Figured as much. Your dad has always had a talent for selective storytelling. Another pause. Then, want to tell me your side? So I did. Everything. The screenshots, the lies, the manipulation. When I finished, there was a long silence. And then Greg sighed. Yeah, that sounds about right. I nearly laughed. Elderly? They were 65, in good health, and still enjoying country club events, at least until their finances crashed. Thanks to Brandon's mistake, I'd seen the photos myself. Still, a small part of me hesitated. Had I really left them with nothing? I needed facts, not feelings. So, I called the pharmacy where my father filled his prescriptions, pretending to be my mother. I'm calling about my husband, Thomas Wright's heart medication. What's the cost without insurance? The pharmacist checked. A pause. $42 for a 30-day supply, Mrs. Wright. Not $450. Another lie. The last flicker of guilt died on the spot. That evening, as I was leaving work, Brandon appeared. He looked like hell, dark circles under his eyes, clothes wrinkled, his usual confidence gone. Jordan, please. He stepped in front of me, desperate. They're falling apart. Dad's talking about bankruptcy. I adjusted my bag on my shoulder. That's not my problem. I stepped around him. How can you be so cold? His voice cracked. They're our parents. I turned, meeting his eyes. Are they? A pause. Because real parents don't exploit their children. Real parents don't laugh about how stupid and gullible their daughter is while draining her bank account. Brandon swallowed hard. They made mistakes, but... No. My voice was cold. A mistake is forgetting a birthday. What they did. That was calculated. And cruel. For years, Brandon. His shoulders slumped. The condo is going into foreclosure. They can't make the payments without you. For a brief moment, guilt twisted in my stomach. Then I remembered the screenshot. Just convinced Jordan we're struggling with rent. Meanwhile, we're closing on the lake condo next week. Cheers. I exhaled slowly. They shouldn't have bought a place they couldn't afford. What about Dad's medication? I raised an eyebrow. You mean the prescription that costs $42, Not $450? Brandon paled. How did you? I tilted my head. I did my research. No more lies. I turned and walked to my car. Tell them to look into government assistance programs. That's what they're there for. Jordan, he called after me. They're talking about moving in with me. I can't handle that. I glanced back. That sounds like a you problem, Brandon. A tight smile. Welcome to consequences. 2 weeks later, I sat across from Dr. Carter, finally in therapy. She listened as I recounted everything, the betrayal, the guilt, the moments of doubt. Every day, I swing between feeling strong and feeling horrible, I admitted. Yesterday, I found out they had to cancel their country club membership, and I actually felt guilty. For hours. She nodded. That's normal, Jordan. You're grieving the family you thought you had. And that includes grieving the role you played as their provider. I swallowed. But they didn't deserve my support. Both things can be true at once. They didn't deserve it. And you can still feel loss about no longer providing it. Her words settled inside me, uncomfortably true. For 5 years, I had tied my identity to being the successful daughter who made sure her parents never struggled. Who was I without that role? Dr. Carter leaned forward. The role of family provider became part of your identity. Now you're redefining who you are without it. I sat with that thought for a long moment, and for the first time since cutting them off, I realized I wasn't just getting my money back. I was getting myself back. Then 6 months later, I came home from a business trip and found them sitting on my porch steps. My parents. My father had lost weight. My mother's expensive highlights had grown out, gray roots stark against her usual perfection. Their clothes weren't the designer brands they used to wear. For a moment, instinct kicked in. Turn around. Leave. Don't engage. But Carter and I had discussed this. I was stronger. Now, I could face them without breaking. So I stepped out, approached slowly. What are you doing here? My mother's voice cracked. Jordan, please. We just want to talk. We've learned our lesson, my father added. These past months have been hell. I unlocked my door. You have 5 minutes. Inside, they sat awkwardly on my couch. I remained standing, arms crossed. We're sorry, my mother began. We never should have taken advantage of your generosity. My father nodded. We've lost everything, the condo, the car, our savings. We had to move in with Brandon, and his place is so small. Your mother sleeps on a pull-out couch. The country club revoked our membership, my mother added. All our friends are there. They don't call anymore. My medication costs have been terrible without your insurance, my father continued. Medicare doesn't cover everything. I listened. Waited. They listed everything they had lost. But an actual apology never came. No, we're sorry we hurt you. No, we were wrong to mock you. Just a catalog of their hardships, as if I should feel guilty. I tilted my head. Is that it? My mother sat up straighter. We want to make things right. We've really suffered, Jordan. We've learned our lesson. I narrowed my eyes. What lesson would that be? They exchanged glances. Finally, my father sighed. That we shouldn't have taken you for granted. Translation. We should have been more careful about getting caught. I exhaled slowly. No. You haven't learned anything. What do you mean? My mother asked, her voice rising. We came all this way to apologize. I shook my head. No, you came all this way to tell me how much you've suffered without my money. Not once have you acknowledged how your betrayal made me feel. We said we're sorry, my father argued. For getting caught, maybe. Not for what you did. I took a deep breath. In the past 6 months, I've thought a lot about what a healthy family looks like. It's not this. It's not treating your child like an ATM. It's not mocking her behind her back. My mother's face hardened. So you're just going to keep punishing us? Over a few jokes. I met her gaze. This isn't punishment. This is self-respect. We're your parents, my father snapped. I nodded. And I was your daughter, not your bank. I opened the door. I wish you well, but I can't be part of your lives anymore. My mother's eyes filled with tears. You can't mean that. We need you. I gave a small sad smile. No, Mom. You need what I can provide. That's not the same thing. My father stood, anger replacing his earlier contrition. So that's it? After everything we've done for you? I held his gaze. What exactly have you done for me, Dad? Besides taking, and taking, and taking. He had no answer. As they walked out, my mother turned. You'll regret this, Jordan. Family is all you have in the end. I smiled. No, Mom. Family is love. What you offered was just a transaction. I closed the door. And for the first time in my adult life, I was free.